Hey guys, this is Thomas over here at NurseMoneyTalk.com, and in this video what I want to do is I want to actually talk about 10 good jobs that I think older nurses should really consider. Now, whenever I was looking at these jobs, I was really trying to look at jobs that fit at least into one of three categories. The first were jobs that required a little bit more flexibility in them, because we know how very unflexible it could be working in hospital nursing, which is where I'm sure a lot of the older nurses are coming from. The second were really looking at jobs that I felt were less physically demanding. Now, for obvious reasons, as you get older, you probably don't want to deal with as much kind of like moving and turning of patients and whatnot. And truth be told, a lot of nurses get beat up over the course of their long nursing career just doing inpatient nursing. If you look at, just kind of like what nurses have to go through in these no-lift facilities where you're having to help patients up, where you're having to turn patients, and so on and so forth. So that was my second category, second criteria, I should say. The third one was really looking at these nursing jobs that may be potentially required some or a lot of nursing experience. Now, there was a couple reasons for this. The first one being that as you are older, you have a lot more nursing experience, but the even more important part of this is that the jobs that require more extensive nursing experience also means that it'll be easier for you to get the job, and it'll be harder for those who are just starting out to be able to land those jobs. Now, before I get started with that, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, I want to go ahead and invite you to hit that subscribe button. On this channel, I talk about all things related to nursing student, and of course, nurse life. And if you find this video helpful, I would really encourage you to hit that share button and share it with other nurses, especially if they're older nurses or nurses who are looking at retiring, who might potentially benefit from seeing this information. Now, let's start off with the first one, and that's school nursing. And so the thing with school nursing is, for the most part, you're really just promoting like a healthy lifestyle. Now, of course, you'll be dealing with, some health issues, maybe some medication issues relating to kids, and of course, dealing with the parents as well. And as always, there's going to be a lot of education and teaching as well involved in this. But I think it's fair to say, when you're looking at, in terms of the stress and how much you have to deal with, for the most part, kids are generally going to be healthier than adults. For the most part. Obviously, there's exceptions to this. I would imagine probably the most stressful part of this is really going to be looking at dealing with parents, which honestly, if you've ever worked with kids, which I've worked, for many years with kids, the most stressful part of dealing with children tends to actually be less, in my experience anyway, tends to be less with the kids and more so with the parents. Now, some other good things about this job is, of course, you're going to be working school schedule. And so you're probably going to have summers off, holidays off, weekends off, and whatnot. So probably something to consider if working with kids kind of fits what you like doing. The second one is psych nurse or mental health nursing. Now, this one, I was a little bit conflicted in whether or not I wanted to actually include this one on this list, because on one hand, I've worked mental health before. There's a lot of older nurses that tend to work mental health. I think there's a lot of aspects of it that tends to make it more conducive for an older nurse, if you will. So for instance, unless you're dealing with geriatric patients, then you're probably not doing a lot of physically, a lot of the physically intensive things that you're more likely to do if you work like med surg or ICU, which is turning patients and the whole 9 yards. The downside with this is that there is a high risk for physical violence potentially. And so the thing with this job is that I would actually, minus the risk for physical violence, which, to be really fair, that's kind of hard for me to even say, because that is a big deal and something to really consider. But this job, for the most part, I would honestly say would probably be more emotionally draining than actually physically draining. So something to keep in mind. The next one is looking at nurse educator positions. And so this could be either working as an actual professor at a nursing program, or I would honestly actually throw in doing like clinical adjunct positions as well in this. So of course, this is a position where if you have a lot of experience, especially a lot of clinical experience, then there's a lot of value you can add to the students. You're helping to essentially train up the next generation of nurses. So you're going to be looking at a lot of, regular traditional school hours in terms of probably having weekends off, probably just doing more or less 9 to 5. And you're probably going to have summers off for a lot of the positions you're going to take. Now, of course, you do have some programs that do run through the summer, but that is something to keep in mind. One note that I will throw in about this position, especially if you're looking at full-time faculty position, is that a lot of these institutions are moving towards either having their nursing faculty be a PhD or a DNP, a doctorate in nursing practice. So something to definitely keep in mind. Next one is telephone triage nursing. And for the most part in this position, you're fielding calls, answering patients' questions, and then making recommendations based on what the patient's questions or concerns are. Now, for very obvious reasons, I think this should be a position that an older nurse, especially one who's might not be in the best physical shape or not looking to be very physically active, should consider, since a lot of what you're doing is, of course, answering the phone, and a lot of this, having a lot of good and strong nursing experience will definitely come in play. The next one is looking at clinic or primary care nursing. This will really depend on, are we talking about specifically primary care, or are we talking about specialty clinic? Because for a lot of these clinics, you're probably going to be looking at Monday through Friday, probably banker's hours as well. You're not going to be dealing with a lot of the issues that you would deal with when you're dealing with inpatients. And even if you're in a specialty clinic, a lot of times, so like for instance, endoscopy, maybe like the cath lab or something like that, which those specialty clinics, I will mention, will probably be a heck of a lot more stressful than your primary care. But you're probably just going through, like, you take care of a patient and then they discharge by the end of the day. So you're not having to sit on patients. And even if it is a patient that needs to go inpatient, then you're going to transfer them off to either like to another facility, or if this is just a clinic that's an extension of like a major hospital, then they're just going to go to the major hospital to be an inpatient. So definitely something to consider. One note I will throw in for this is that some of these specialty clinics will have on-call, and so that could be where you might have like rotating calls. So essentially, so if the clinic, let's say, is open, let's say you're in endoscopy and it's open, I don't know, 7 to 5 or whatever, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. But if they have emergency cases, they might need somebody to have to come in and do like an emergency scope on a patient. And so they'll have nursing staffs that will rotate through weekday and weekend for it. So some of those calls can be brutal, especially if you're doing like private sector. Now, if you're doing like the government sector or public sector, that can be a little different. But if you're doing private sector, I will give you a heads up. I would definitely, if you are considering this job or any job actually for that matter, I would definitely make sure that you field some phone calls, try to reach out to some Facebook groups or people who you know that might work for that particular facility and get an idea of what it's like. With that said though, if any of these jobs are interesting to you or you'd like to check out and see what openings there might be, check out the job board at NurseMoneyTalk by going to nursemoneytalk.com/job. Now, number 6, academic/freelance nurse writer. So this is essentially, as the name goes, you're writing articles for either, these could be journals, these could be websites, these could be blogs, it could be whatever the case may be, but you're essentially writing for a living. And so this is actually like a really great profession or really great area of nursing to go into, because that frees up your time a fair bit, especially if you can manage to get some clients as well, because then you just have articles you have to write. But whether or not you write them at 8 in the morning or 8 p.m. or you write them at your home state or you write them out in the middle of California or Florida or whatever the case may be on vacation, nobody is really gonna care as long as the project ends up getting done, the task ends up getting done. So definitely worth checking out. Now, I will mention the caveat with this, like every other job, is that, you know, with this one, getting clients could be a struggle, because now you're gonna have to market yourself. Pay may or may not be good, just depending on, well, one, how good of a writer you are and how well you can market. And it goes without saying that you have to love writing, and you have to either be a strong writer or be able to develop into being a good writer. And not just being a good writer, but being a good writer for the type of articles you're writing. Because as most people don't seem to realize, that there's a difference in writing styles based on what medium is being published. So for instance, is this a newspaper? Is this a blog on a website? Is this for a journal article? Like, all of those are gonna require different writing styles, so you're definitely going to have to get really good at that craft. Next one is legal nurse consultant. Now, this one is, you're pretty much going to be reviewing maybe like charts or particular medical cases for a law firm or an attorney. You might even need to come in and be like an expert nurse witness on some cases. So this is a really good profession for the nurse who has a lot of experience. Going back to what I said originally when I first started this video, this is one of those jobs where, like, it's gonna be really hard for somebody to just come out of nursing school and start doing this, because they don't have that experience that these attorneys are really gonna be looking for when reviewing these charts and when decisions like that are being made. So if law or kind of like that legal aspect of things is of remote interest to you, definitely do some Google searches on this particular field of legal nurse consultant, because I think you might find it interesting. I'll actually also put some information in the descriptions below, so definitely check that out, because legal nurse consultant, I know for me, has been one of the areas of nursing that I've actually been looking at for years. And so I'm actually highly considering jumping into this field. So definitely check it out. And if you are actually a nurse who have done this before and you have some thoughts on this, so let us know what your thoughts on this and how you like it in the comment section. Number 9 is occupational health nurse. And so this is just a nurse who's gonna be working for, so if you think like a company or maybe like a factory, and so you're gonna be hired on to essentially do health promotion for employees. So this is an interesting one to look at. So once again, nursing experience is really going to be, in my opinion, a big deal, because a lot of times you might be working by yourself. So unlike in a hospital where if you need help, there's somebody who's close by, another nurse, another senior nurse close by you could ask questions to, this one might not necessarily be the case. Good thing about this job is a lot of times you're probably working like an 8 to 5 shift, potentially having weekends off as well. So if having those 9 to 5 type hours are important to you, definitely make sure to check out this job. So last but certainly not least, number 10 is travel nursing. Now, this is not actually a particular specialty of nursing. Obviously is taking contract nurses. So for instance, you live in Oklahoma, you take contract nursing, you take a contract nursing job for a hospital, like let's say in Texas or whatever other state. So there's a couple of reasons why I actually think this could be a really great option for an older nurse. So for example, with some of the legislation that has gone through over the last couple of years or so with the Nurse Licensure Compact. So if you guys don't know what that is, I have an article and a video over this, so definitely check that out. I'll put it in the comments, I'll put it in the descriptions below. But it essentially allows you, if you're one of the 30-something compact states or whatever, you can get a multi-state license that's good for all the states in that compact. I think there's 30-something of them. I'll put it in the screen. I can't remember from the top of my head how many there are. But so what that means is, like, you don't have to now deal with a million different licenses just because you want to go travel around to different states. You can potentially just deal with one licensure and still have your pick of over half of the states in the country. The next reason older nurses should consider this is because travel nursing, so moving around, going from one state to the other, whatever, is not very conducive for people with families. So younger kids or people with a spouse. Now, we know as you're older, your kids, if you had any, are probably already grown and probably out of the house at college. Either way, they're not living with you most likely. And honestly, like, as you get older, there's probably a chance that you may or may not have gotten divorced. That's just kind of what it is. And so if you are the older nurse who you're divorced, your kids are already out of the house, then that frees you up to really start looking at these travel nursing positions, because the beauty of it is you are essentially getting paid to go travel around to other states. You live in Florida, but I don't know if Florida is a compact state. I'm just saying one state. So you live in Florida, but you've always wanted to check out Texas, or you've always wanted to check out California or New York or whatever the case may be. You could then get jobs that will pretty much pay you to work there. So essentially travel there, you work there, and then you can see the sights and do X, Y, and Z or whatever. And then when you're done, you can either take more contracts there, or you can go to the next state, or you can go home. And so that, to me, allows you to see a lot of sites and a lot of different places in the country. The last bit that I think would be pretty good for an older nurse is that there's a potential to get paid really well doing travel nursing. And so if you are the older nurse, like let's say your retirement is not looking that good or whatever, and so this could be a good opportunity to work really hard for a couple of years and actually help kind of bolster your retirement a bit. Now, I will throw this caveat out there, and to me, this is probably one of the biggest cons out there. Well, one of the biggest cons for travel nursing, besides like you're traveling around and you're not staying in one place, and that's hard for family and relationships and whatever. So that might not be a big of a deal as you're the older, as you get older. But the one that I think is a big deal at any stage of travel nursing is that if you don't know what you're doing, there's a good chance that you might actually not make that good of a money travel nursing, or even make less money travel nursing than if you were like a full-time staff somewhere, like at your actual like home state. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of this, but if this is something that you are interested in, then let me know in the comment sections below, and now I'll make another video on this. But either way, I do think that these 10 jobs that I've listed, I do think that these are really good starting points for any nurse who's trying to maybe slow down a little bit and get out of the hustle and bustle of inpatient nursing. So don't forget to check out NurseMoneyTalk.com/jobs to start applying. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you very soon in that next one.